Okay, someone asked me to make a multiple choice quiz game, so this will probably just be a single video. This can be done either in the 2D or 3D environments because the code isn't specific to either one of those. So we'll just do it in the 2D environment. So first we need to create our text object. So game object, create empty. We'll call this question text. Add component, mesh, text mesh. Just type in test. Character size 0.15. Font size 42. Font Arial. We'll just move this over. Now it's important to note that by default the anchor is the upper left, so it's over here. So if you type this out more, it'll expand to the right as opposed to expanding out to the left and the right. So if say you wanted this centered, then what you'd probably want to do is change the anchor to the middle center. That way as you type, it'll expand in both directions. But if you don't want it centered, if you want it, say, left aligned, then you'll leave the anchor as the upper left and align the left where you want it to be. And that way when you type out, as you can see, it's pushing out to the right because you've anchored it to the left. Now we just copy that and paste it. Now we're not going to call this answer 1, we're just going to call it 1. And it actually saves a little bit of typing. There's a couple other things it does for us too, but we'll get into that in a minute. And now you just move these down, and I'm not doing any precision alignment with them. Maybe you want to push them in, you want to indent them, but whatever, you're going to want to make sure that they're lined up correctly. I'm just kind of eyeballing it for the purposes of this demonstration. And actually, we'll create an extra space just in case this comes out 2 lines long. Okay, so that creates our 5 text objects. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a script, attach it to those text objects, and that will control what these will actually say. Okay, so right-click, create C#, and we'll call this text control. For the moment, we'll just attach it to the question text object, and we'll open that up. Now we need to add something at the top here if we want to use a list. So using system.collections, just like the one above it, but then we have to add generic. This allows for the use of lists. So, list, then the type, then the name, call it questions, equals new list string, and now the squiggly brackets. Now here's the way the list works. You're able to store multiple values in it at one time, but it's only actually equal to 1 at one time. So the first value will be in position 0. The second value will be in position 1. Third value in position 2. Yes, it's annoying because it starts at position 0. There's just no way around it. We'll talk about one remediation for that, or you can just remember that it starts at 0. Okay, so list string questions equals new list string, parentheses, the brackets, and now you start putting in values. Since it's a string, it needs to be in quotes. So this is the first question. Now, clearly that's not what you really want. This is purely for demonstrative purposes. And go ahead and put the semicolon on at the end. Now, to change the actual value of a text object, okay, so when you click on the object, you can see it has a text mesh, and a text attribute. So that's what we want to go after. So for the moment, we'll put this into the start section, but for the game itself, it'll actually be in the update section. So get component. Again, here's these greater than and less than signs being used like they're parentheses. So get component, we said it's the text mesh, and we said it's the text attribute, and it's going to be set to, and this is how you extract a value from a list. You put in the name of the list, so questions, and then in square brackets you have to say which position. You want the value from position 0. So you have to differentiate between the position and the value. So it's not that big of a deal when you're using numbers and text, but if you're doing, say, list of integers, then it might get a little confusing that you're asking for a certain position but getting an entirely different number. So it's important to understand the difference. The function of this is the position, the ordinal position, position 0, position 1, position 2, and this is the actual value in that position. So if I didn't make any mistakes, the this question text should become that. So let's go ahead and save it and see if I did anything wrong. And there we go. So that's the basics. So now you see how to take a value from a list and drop it into a text mesh. So clearly what we're going to do is we're going to create 4 more, 1 for each of these. So list. Now there's a couple ways we can do this. We can give each object its own script, or we can give each object its own script, or we can create a separate script, or we can create one script that looks at the value. Because right now, what this does, get component, it says whatever object this is attached to, do this. So if I take the script and attach it to the other object, they'll all change to that. So that means I need to add some if statements that say, okay, what's the name of this object before it makes any changes. So trying to think what the best way to do this would be. If I need them to communicate, I can just use I could just use global values. So for now, let's have just one variable, one script per object. So let's go ahead and we'll create a new script. We'll call this text1. Click on text1. Put it there. And now we'll say same thing using system.collections.generic list string answer. Let's call this first choice. I want to avoid putting numbers in the name of the variables, so I don't want to call this choice 1 or answer 1. Like I said, it gets a little confusing because as it is, you see in the square brackets, you're going to see a number, so I don't want that to confuse with the name of the variable itself. So we'll just call this first choice. So equals new list string and we'll call this first choice. And it doesn't matter that this matches this. This is a text string, so there shouldn't be any confusion on the part of Unity. And get component. Text mesh. Text equals first choice 0. Now, I hope you see where this is going, because right now we're giving a constant. All we have to do is make one tweak. We create a variable, and then rather than showing the 0 choice, it could be the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, that kind of thing. So ultimately, that's what we're going to do. We're going to replace that with a variable. So basically, it's going to be rinse and repeat. I might skip ahead and I might not, but basically, it's just you're going to create 3 more of these, 1 for each one. And even at that, this is really mirroring what was done here. So let's go ahead and create the next one. Got list string second choice equals new list string and I also want to differentiate something else here now I'm thinking about it, because I don't want the text to be confusing. So this is going to be the first selection in the second choice variable. In other words, it's here. Okay, so it's on this second one. But if this is the first question, then you're still using the first corresponding position. So again, trying to not confuse between the sequence, the ordinal position, and some of the other naming we're using. And then the same thing. Get component text mesh dot text equals second choice square bracket 0. Okay, see, it's just rinse and repeat. You're just putting in a list, gonna put multiple values in that list, and then set the text mesh to the remaining values. I might just jump ahead. Now that you've seen me do 3 of them, I might just jump ahead and do the last 2 texts in between videos. So I'm going to stop here and see how long the video is. So if it's long enough, then what I'll probably do is just in between videos, because there's no point in seeing me type the whole thing out over and over again. It's exactly the same 3 lines. It's adding the system collection generic, creating the string, and then creating the get component.